And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And now for the most powerful hour on radio, here is End Time Newsman, Rick Wiles.
This is True News, 1 hour of uncensored news, views, and commentary. Welcome to the program. I'm Rick Wiles. Welcome back to segment 2 of True News. We heard from Governor Mike Huckabee in the first segment. Asset management specialist Terry Sacka is here for segment 2. Terry is the chief strategist for Cornerstone Asset Metals. Terry, welcome back.
Hi, Rick. Pleasure.
Yes, sir. Also in the studio with me is Doc, Edward, and Bob.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you guys back here. We're going to discuss Saudi Arabia's planned invasion of Syria and the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank's interest rate decision announced today. Guys, let's start with the Fed rate hike decision. The U.S. Federal Reserve today raised the interest rate from 0 to 0.25%. It also said they intend to have 3 more rate increases of the same size throughout 2016. Terry, why is this a big deal?
I don't believe the continued rate hikes, but the one hike today for a couple of factors. Number one was credibility. They flat out made it clear that they weren't going to, and if they decided not to, the world would have known that we were in serious trouble. They also know that without strong demand for treasuries, which we've had the last few months, massive dumping of U.S. treasuries, that if they didn't raise the rate, there would be no attraction to even come here. So that could also bring liquidity back into this country and people to buy the rates. But what's interesting is she just said in her interview that allowing or raising the rate here gives them the ability, if something were to happen economically, that they could then cut the rates to stimulate. I know that they must know that what's coming is coming, and they had to raise in order for them to be able to lower. Because if you look at just the 2 factors of when they raised rates last time, one, the last time they raised the rates in 2006, our debt to GDP was 61%. This time, our debt to GDP is 104%. And last time they raised the rates, housing starts were 2.5 million and booming. This time, barely 1 million. We're not doing even remotely okay to have rates go up, but they must raise rates for credibility and to get ready for what is coming.
All right, Terry, this is a good point you're making because historically, central banks raise interest rates to cool down overheating economies. They lower interest rates to spur economic growth. They raise interest rates to slow it down. Am I missing something here? Do any of you guys see signs of an overheated economy?
I don't see one. I hear the unemployment's low, but I don't believe it either.
You know, the best factor for that, forget what they're saying. It's the data. And the data says the Baltic Dry Index, which is really goods moving around the world, has tumbled to 471, which is the lowest level in 30 years. And China is also on the verge, where they make most of the world's steel, is on track for the biggest drop in output in more than 20 years. So if the economies were heating, those 2 core factors of economic growth would never be at almost record lows.
And you're right, Terry, because throughout the last 6 months of 2015, all of the global news about the economy has been a warning that the world is locking up. The world economic system is locking up. It's slowing down. Global manufacturing is down. Commodity prices have plunged. Oil is in the basement. Shipping is in a depression. So I have to wonder, are they deliberately pulling the pin to detonate the economy? Are they trying to bring down the house in 2016?
Boy, if they're not trying, then why would they be doing it? Because if you look at the other indicator, is the one antithesis for the Fed. It's the Achilles heel. The physical gold and silver COMEX inventories that actually back up the paper physical gold and silver that controls the prices in the market, which is typically our indicator of inflation and economic growth, is gold and silver prices. Those inventories are literally at historic lows, meaning they have sold 330 ounces of gold on paper for every 1 real ounce in the vault for delivery. Wow. We are astounded because the physical gold and silver is flying out the door. The inventories in the COMEX are empty, and it's because most of the activity is purely driven by what is coming. The underground, or those that know, you may be right, Rick, that this bomb is ready to blow. If they're pulling a pin on purpose, I wouldn't be surprised, because it's a way to flush out and distract for some of the underlying derivative problems we have.
Terry, I've got to rewind back to what you said a few minutes ago about gold and silver. Your statement produced a lot of deer in the headlight looks here in the studio. I saw it on the faces of the guys here. Say that again.
I'm astounded at this. I mean, we are manufacturers of silver for IRA accounts and such. And 2015 was the largest demand for physical silver in a decade plus. The inventories that actually control the futures market, which is technically, they say, the physical market, which is ridiculous. It's now the derivative market. But they control the price of gold and silver. They have actually sold in the markets for gold 330 ounces on paper for every 1 real physical ounce in the vault for delivery. So just think, there's 330 guys on one side of the street and 1 ounce of gold on the other side. Who's going to get it? That has been going on increasingly over the last year and a half, and yet the prices are so low. It's purely a manipulation, a gift and a blessing to those who get it. But the fact that the vault inventories are near empty should shudder those in the West.
For people who have gold holdings in paper assets, they have a certificate that says they own gold. You're saying that there are 330 ounces on paper for every 1 ounce of physical gold, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Meaning the paper will be found, if it's not controlled properly,
so
those holding paper, that market, that COMEX will default. If it defaults, credibility is gone. But the thing is, if we have an implosion, what really looks all the data says is coming, at the end of the day, it's like musical chairs. If you're holding paper, you get smoked. If you're holding the real physical, you see a tremendous wealth transfer because you can almost name a price as they're escalating.
So, Terry, if there is an event that sparks a stampede, people running for the exit doors, and the people who are holding gold certificates, and they said, I'm cashing in my gold certificate. I want the real stuff. They're not going to be able to get it, are they?
I don't think so. No. It's it's going to be sad because a lot of folks are waiting because they just don't understand what's really going on. I have a bad feeling that when they finally get around to realizing it's a real good idea to own silver, that it's going to be extremely difficult to get, or you're going to pay a tremendous premium, because what they just did today was merely a saving face and giving them the ability to lower that rate real soon here with what's coming. I mean, think, the world is in negative interest rates.
Right.
Japan, Europe, Canada. So there's nothing positive economically. So they're preparing for a fallout. And if you're at zero, there's nowhere else to go. So to go up, to come down, only makes sense.
Well, even Ben Bernanke yesterday in an interview said that the only way he sees a way out of it is through negative interest rates as well.
Which means taking your money.
That's right.
We have 1 minute remaining before we take a break. I'm still going back to this paper gold versus physical gold. How are the brokerage houses getting away with this legally? Shouldn't they be in prison for fraud?
Absolutely, but they've gotten a clearance called a naked short. They're allowed to sell something they don't own. I can't do that, mind you. I'm a refiner of physical silver manufacturer. I can't do it. But they're selling naked shorts, and it's purely to support those that are fiat-based. They're there to protect the dollar's image. This is purely psychological.
We'll hold it right there. We're going to take a break. My guest is Terry Sacka. He's Chief Strategist for Cornerstone Assets Metals. Doc, Edward, and Bob are here in the studio with me. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back in a few minutes with part 2.
Reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ, you're listening to True News, the End Time Newscast.
Hey, welcome back to True News. I'm Rick Wiles. Terry Sacka from Cornerstone Assets Metals is here in today's program, along with Doc, Edward, and Bob. We were talking in the last segment about the paper gold market in comparison to physical gold. And during the break, Bob had a very good question. I asked him to just hold this until we came back on the air. Bob, asked Terry the question you wanted to get an answer on.
When you started mentioning the number of people that, well, there's really no physical gold to back up their paper gold, we hear a lot about gold-backed IRAs. How does that translate? Are they in a danger zone, or do they actually have physical assets to cover that IRA?
The nice part about an IRA, the precious metals IRA, is it actually is a physical metal that is purchased and stored in a vault on your behalf. The nice thing is it's owned and under management of a custodian, so it is real physical. That's the thing is most people have money in the stock markets in their IRA in paper gold, paper silver, when they really should have a precious metals IRA in the physical because it's the same investment, but you're owning the real physical. And gold isn't really even the place to go because gold going to the high maybe returns a 60% return. Silver going to the same highs, which they travel together, is a 200% return. So the physical silver really is the wealth transfer in that physical market.
How would I know if my 401k is a gold-backed one or a gold paper-backed one?
A 401k is probably paper.
Okay.
IRAs are always the physical. It's very rare, not always. I shouldn't say that.
So
why is that, Terry?
In an IRA typically will travel to the physical, but if their IRA is managed by a broker or someone in the fiat system, they're probably getting talked into paper-backed, not the real physical, and most folks don't even realize that's the case.
Terry, why the difference between the 401k and the IRA?
401ks are managed by a brokerage firm, and you have very limited choices. Unfortunately, you don't have a lot of choice. You can pick a few categories, and they're usually done in mutual funds. So they'll pick up a little bit of gold or silver on paper and tell them, yeah, you have gold and silver, don't worry about it, when in fact they're really not protected because if there is any form of a default when the physical market shows its true color, then those paper investments won't be worth anything because they don't produce anything.
All right, now your company, Cornerstone Asset Metals, this is your specialty, right? That your company, do you manage the IRAs for people so that they have an IRA based in silver and gold?
Yeah, we are actually the manufacturer, so we supply the physical silver for the IRA. We produce, the only Judeo-Christian good delivery COMEX silver in the country, but we use a kingdom trust for the custodian. We help people with the paperwork. We help them with the physical purchase and transfer. We take care of everything. Pretty much make it. It's a transparent and pretty simple process. We even have it now. I know, we've done this for True News audiences in the past, Rick, that the fees that go to set these up, because it's so important for the kingdom to be protected, that we not only waived the fees to set up the precious metals account, it actually allows you to get free silver because instead of buying the fees, you now are going to get extra silver for free. So it's a wonderful way to just bless the kingdom with a gift, but more importantly, make the awareness that proper protection and preservation in what is coming in real tangible assets is paramount because the paper derivative market is so unreasonable. And if I could just caveat with this, all you guys, I'd be curious if anyone has an opinion to help me on this. Is it not seem reasonable that almost all laws of economics and all types of a correlation that used to exist between different markets They're all just out the window. Nothing is correlated anymore that it used to be, and no law of economics are being followed anymore.
Everything's in suspension. I mean, for example, what you told us about precious metals, the demand is at the highest level in many years, and yet the prices are in the basement.
Right.
There's that law of economics. That's what I'm saying, supply demand. And if they knew, not only is the supply dwindling, the Chinese and the rest of the world get it. They are incredible in their importation of gold and silver, especially silver. We are being suppressed with the psychology of it. But yet, exactly, if the supply is through, or supply is dwindling to nothing, the demand is the greatest it's been. Law of economics says the price should be higher. It's a derivative manipulation,
Right.
which I just have to say, a lot of people think, oh, they can do it forever. Not when you have the Chinese and the rest of the world consuming that physical, because they know the dollar's coming down, and that's why they're dumping the treasuries. That's why raising the interest rates was important here. And so there will be a reckoning in that market. And when that silver-gold ratio goes back, you're going to see an explosive valuation in silver. I think it's going to break the highs of 50 for sure, because it's just laws of economics are broken. And when everything's broken and it's full of deception, we know who's in charge of that. And when that happens, truth and reckoning will come, but it'll be a cost to those that are not listening.
Well, metal prices are definitely up today.
Well, you know what's interesting, Rick? They raise the rates. All law of economics says one thing, and yet gold and silver are up. Silver's up almost 40 cents. So it's just really some strange times out there.
Yeah, gold's
There
up
is
$11.
No truth in what
Right.
people call a normalcy of markets. What you're seeing in the mainstream media is just flat-out deception, like I was sharing with the Baltic Dry Index. All the other trade and economic data, all is in the negative, recessionary negative, yet they're not making you seem that way.
All right, now here's another point we need to consider. All right, the Fed said that there's going to be 4 rate increases of 0.25% each from now to fall 2016. ZeroHedge.com reported several days ago that for each 0.25% rate hike, $1 trillion of liquidity will be drained out of the markets. So if they're accurate, the Fed will drain $4 trillion of liquidity from the markets over the next 12 months. Terry, what's the impact of the markets losing $4 trillion of liquidity?
Well, if I could throw a little curveball on that, and you mentioned it starting out with Saudi Arabia, I really have a gut feeling there's a deeper underlying issue here. Raising these rates is really sticking it to the global economy too. And these countries, we gave out $9 trillion in dollar-based loans since 2008. We bailed out the world. So you have that as one part of it. And then the other, by doing this, remember, the Chinese have been dumping their reserves. They have been getting rid of those dollars like crazy to keep their currency down. But it's not about keeping their currency down, although that's been the effect. They're getting rid of the dollars. So by raising these rates, I think it's some other kind of a counter effect to the global war scenario that is facing us with Russia, China, and the East. It just smells like it could really be more of a counteraction to that, because the Chinese, remember, they're dumping a lot of dollars right now, reserves. A lot of nations are, and they keep calling it a currency war manipulation. I think it's deeper. I think they all know the dollar's getting ready to hit. And is it a derivative blow-up? I don't know. But something really big is coming, and everybody else is preparing except the American people, and that's what's concerning.
Now, guys, I think what happened today with the Fed saying that there would be 4 rate hikes from late 2015 to late 2016, I think this confirms what the Holy Spirit told me, that late 2015 to late 2016 should be viewed as bookends.
Right.
That trouble will start at the end of 2015 and build up and accelerate throughout 2016. But the real crisis is at the end of next year.
Right.
So I think that's been confirmed today. I think we're seeing it in motion.
Point. And you know what's interesting? This happens to be the Jubilee year.
Oh, and on top of this,
yes, that's right.
Thanks for bringing that up, Terry, because today is the 7th year anniversary of the Fed taking the rates to zero. They deliberately made the announcement today, 7 years to the day. I think they're luminous. I think they're into numerology.
Well, they're occult-driven. They're definitely Luciferian led. That's absolutely for sure.
Why would they choose the same day?
This is a major moment for those, and I'm glad you brought the Holy Spirit up, Rick, because really, as Jesus said, for those that have ears, let them hear. For those that have, more will be given. And he's talking about discernment. We really have to see through the fog and the deception that is in front of us if we in the kingdom are going to be salvaged. And it's really about where we putting our assets for protection. If we don't have our assets when this thing blows up by next year or so, where are we going to be as a kingdom to be able to continue the mission? And that's my biggest concern.
All right, here's another issue. J.P. Morgan said that $1.1 trillion worth of the S&P's 500 index options, of which $670 billion worth are puts, that they will expire on Friday, December 18. What does this mean, Terry?
Well, someone's getting rich and someone's losing a lot of money. Beautiful thing about an option, there's a seller and a buyer. So whoever sold those puts, if they expire worthless, they keep the money.
Right.
And whoever bought the puts, they lose the money. So we're going to find out if certain companies, certain money managers were overboard in their bet, you could say.
Well,
that's what makes me concerned with the markets, is the betting nature of it.
We're going to find out in the next 48 hours.
Right.
Okay.
Right. There's too many companies on the edge. I mean, they're talking about high bond yields imploding, and there's too many companies ready to literally implode. And we've talked about this in the past, Rick, too, with Glencore and others. There's so many that are on the edge of blowing up. These type of options could really be a catalyst. It depends on really who placed the bet.
Especially the small to middle-size oil and energy companies.
Yes.
That are swimming, trying to keep their head above water right now. Most of them are not going to make it past April.
They can't. They can't afford to.
Mm-hmm. I've got to ask one real quick question. It may not seem like it's on target, but something just keeps hitting me inside. For the last couple of years, and even in recent weeks, you'll see people on these main highways holding and waving signs, "We buy gold." What gives with that? They're still out there wanting to buy gold.
It's a pure physical demand. What the media is telling you, here the prices are so low, and what the media is telling you isn't true in the physical market. The premiums are high. The U.S. Mint sold out. They're out of silver. They stopped selling Eagles for the year. We are behind ourselves in the inventory or the manufacturing. The demand is explosive. They're buying it because I really believe those that are paper money heavy want out of paper into physical tangible assets. And that's why, my heart is on those IRAs for Americans in the kingdom, because they happen to just store most of their wealth in the IRAs. And that's why we like to educate people and help them along that process, because they're exactly right. It's a good question. Well, if it's so bad, why do they want it? But I'll tell you, the Chinese want it, the rest of the world wants it, and they're taking it up every ounce. That's why those COMEX inventories are almost empty.
Well, Bob, those highway signs are for dealers that are buying up as much physical gold and silver as they can get.
That's
and
right.
the target market that they're looking for are the struggling middle class,
low and middle income,
that can't pay their mortgage, can't can't pay their bills.
And so they sell their grandmother's ring.
Yes, and that's a sign of how weak the economy is.
And that's so sad too, because when you think they also take them on the premiums big time, and this is the one time that's the last thing you should be selling is your gold and silver.
That's right.
It's just the opposite.
All right,
we should be finding every quarter we can that's old.
That's right. The New York Stock Exchange made a stunning announcement in late November that it will no longer permit investors to make stop orders and good to cancel orders. This rule goes into effect February 26, 2016. Is that a big deal to you?
For me, it's huge because what they tell you and what they really mean are two different things. And I learned that in the military. What we used to say and what we did was completely the opposite and different. What they're telling you is we're doing it because volatility has harmed the market participants because they get stopped out and the market goes back up.
Right.
That's not really what's going on. What happened, and when we had that market crash in September and we were down to about 15,000 on the Dow, I don't know about you guys, but my system went down, my trade system, just personal one. Multiple trading platforms had, technical glitches. The NYSE had technical glitches. If you had stop orders in, they're automatically processed. But if they eliminate stop orders like they're doing, you cannot sell unless you get a hold of a broker and place the order.
That's right. You got to manually do it.
Down a sell-off.
All right. So, Terry, are they closing the gate? Are they corralling all the investors inside and closing the gate and nobody can get out?
Yes. And not only are they closing the gate, Rick, it's terrible because not only are they closing the gate, but try getting a hold of your broker in that time frame.
That's right.
They won't even pick up the phone probably. It'll be so busy. So not only do they close the gate, you won't even be able to sell. So let's say you were going to.
Of a busy
it may
signal.
take a day or two for you to place the order if they don't have the ability to have the electronic stop order places in.
All right,
so I think it's a tragedy for the individual investor. But again, for those that have ears, let them hear. Listen to what's happening out there and properly prepare yourself because that's a great analogy, Rick. Think about it if there's one doorway open and 500 people in a theater are trying to get out in a fire.
All right, so we have the Fed telling us today they're pulling the pin, they're imploding the system. That's basically what they're saying because it does not make sense to raise interest rates now with a global economy as weak as it is.
Right.
So they're doing this now in late 2015. They're going to increase it throughout 2016. They're canceling stop orders effective the end of February 2016. So the smart people who see what's happening have a very short window to get out of the system. After February, what they're telling you is you're trapped.
Yes.
And who knows what's going to happen.
The dots, Rick.
You don't have to be very bright to connect these dots. This is so glaringly obvious what they're doing.
But most people aren't seeing that. I mean, they're not hearing that at all.
All they're talking about is the election.
Doc, that's very true. Not only are they not hearing it, the banker, the broker, the accountant, who is all fiat-based, they're telling them the opposite. So the average person has no idea what's true or not. That's why they better be in tune with the Holy Spirit to know the truth. Because you're right, Doc. They're not only not hearing it, they're being told the opposite.
Now, listen to this statement from a New York Stock Exchange spokeswoman when they made the announcement about canceling the stop orders, which have been around for over 100 years.
Right.
Right.
She said, quote, "We expect our elimination of stop orders will help raise awareness around the potential risk during volatile trading." They're telling you they are expecting volatile trading in 2016.
Starting after February.
Starting after February. And if you are still in the system, you are an idiot.
And how will this affect next year's election?
Well, if we want
I don't know if she exactly said it like that, but that's Rick's version. Honestly, they're telling you up front, volatile trading is coming. Mm-hmm. We're locking the barn door.
And we're going to set the barn on fire.
We're going to set the barn on fire.
We've already sold the horses.
And if you're still in it, it's your fault.
Yeah. And, if they're doing that, and then on the other side of the pond, you have China dumping our treasuries, dumping their reserves in U.S. dollars. Russia is almost literally out of treasuries. So when you start to really put all that together, and then you see all this stuff cooking up in Syria and Saudi Arabia and this whole Assad thing and all of that's about the petrodollar. So when you really see what's going on in the big picture, if I had a big situation board, which I actually do in my office, but if you map it out, you would see that there's a lot more to it. So when they're doing this, it really is important to connect the dots like you're doing, Rick. I'm really glad you're bringing that to your audience because they need to see these things correlated around the globe to understand, and maybe that'll break that deception off from what their brokers or their bankers are telling them.
Rob Kirby said last week on, I don't know whose program he was on, but it was a great quote. He said, we're about to see the greatest Las Vegas magic show ever. He said the Fed is about to make the jet plane disappear.
Well, they made $1 trillion disappear today.
That's right. $1 trillion disappeared. Hey, we only have about 3 minutes remaining. I did want to talk about Saudi Arabia's plans. They're putting together a military alliance, 34 Muslim nations, allegedly to fight ISIS, which was started by Saudi Arabia and the United States. And this appears that they're going to invade Syria. Now, my question is this the reason Vladimir Putin said a week ago that he hopes he is never forced to use nuclear weapons in Syria?
Boy, I would absolutely say yes, because we've been pushing this for years. We've been pushing Russia with Ukraine and everything else for years. We've been trying to get them into war, and they're too cool for us. And Russia is invited into Syria, the only country that was invited by Assad. If we make that move in the West, there is no doubt China and Russia are standing firm, and I wouldn't want to see what's coming after that. I'm with you, Rick. That does not sound good.
If Saudi Arabia leads a 100,000-man Sunni army into Syria, I believe Putin will nuke it. He's going to nuke that invading force. And World War III
either do that,
is
or
on.
you're going to see 100,000 Chinese coming down the pipeline. They're not going to allow it. I just don't believe they will.
Well, you'll definitely see the 150,000 Russian troops on the ground engaged in war with the Sunni army. And then the Iranian Shia army will come in. I mean, this is World War III, folks. If you don't see it, I don't know what else needs to happen to get people to understand World War III has already started.
And the only thing the average American cares about right now is the gas prices low.
It seems to be.
Yeah, but you're telling them, and we tell them on the wealth transfer show that we do, on cable and satellite, it's the same thing. This is huge. And this thing with Iran already in Iraq, and you're right. You're talking hundreds of thousands on both sides stacking up. I don't see how Saudi Arabia pulls that off. I just don't. The youth in the country want to revolt anyway, so this ought to be really interesting.
Yeah, well, the countries involved in this army, United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Bahrain, Turkey, Kuwait, Egypt, Nigeria, Libya, and many more. And Great Britain is going to also assist this army.
Of course they are.
So Great Britain is coming in on the side of the Sunnis led by Saudi Arabia, which is, I'm telling you, is going to provoke Iran to also invade Syria. And at some point, China and Russia will have to open up that can and do what they got to do. But Putin said a week ago, I hope I'm never forced to do this.
And I'm ex-nuclear, and I'll just tell you a policy of the United States. We have a policy of certain retaliation, and economic is part of that. That petrodollar arrangement we made with Saudi Arabia in the 70s, Syria is all about the petro. The Russian-Chinese angle want to take the petrodollar down. We lose the petrodollar relationship in every country needing a dollar for oil. We then lose our ability to have economic power. So this whole thing in Syria is about the petrodollar and the West dominance of the financial system. And so this could very well be the time when the East says, nope, no more. We're going to realign the world's financial system. And the line in the sand has been drawn in Syria because Assad goes out in Syria, they put in the Muslim Brotherhood, Russia gets knocked out of energy for Europe because Qatar takes the pipeline, and the whole thing, we win. If they keep Assad in Syria, the petrodollar goes down. This is the line in the sand, and this is why everyone's taking it so seriously.
Yeah, I think we finally have reached that point in time that many of us have been warning for years is coming. Well, my guest today has been Terry Sacka, Chief Strategist for Cornerstone Asset Metals. And Doc, Edward, and Bob have been in the studio with me today. Gentlemen, thank you so much. We appreciate everybody tuning in to True News. God bless. I'll see you tomorrow. Hey, this is Rick with a 5-minute behind-the-scenes update from True News. I asked Terry Sacka to hang around for another 5 minutes. He was on today's program. We were talking about the Fed decision and world events, especially what's going on in Syria. I want Terry to spend some time in this little update talking about his company's service to us, you, me, our friends, our relatives, and how we can get our retirement funds out of the Babylonian world system and into a sound system based on silver so that we don't lose everything when this entire funny money system implodes. And I believe it is in the process of imploding right now. So, Terry's, I don't mention this but on the program, but Terry is an enthusiastic and generous supporter of True News. We really appreciate his support of True News, and he's helping a lot of our audience move their IRA retirement funds into silver. So, Terry, tell us, we've got about 4 minutes remaining. What is the process? What do people need to do to get their funds out of the world system and into a silver-based retirement savings account?
Yeah, we are thankful for you, Rick, at True News and all the team, because the mission you have is paramount. Truth must be said, and we're here to do the same thing in the economic world. And we know right now, with all the tremendous uncertainty, all the tremendous amount of lies and deception that is out there in the world, not just in our country, that the safest place you can be is where it's been all through history, is in physical, tangible assets, let alone the fact that these particular assets like silver have been so oversold on paper and manipulated on paper that the return on the investment of parking fiat monies and retirement monies into that physical asset now at this price, when it goes back to the high, yields a 200% return. So we know in the kingdom it's vital to be in the right side of the fence when this takes place. So we're here at Cornerstone Asset Metals to help facilitate, educate, help people fill out the forms, help them do the transfers, answer any of the questions. We have tremendous experts on hand. Everyone in Cornerstone are on fire, Holy Spirit-driven Christians. We are serious about the protection of the kingdom. Because we are appreciative of True News' mission, and we do want to continue to support what we've wanted to do here just for the listeners, is to make sure that all setup fees are waived. They are now getting free silver instead of having to pay the fees on that portion, which I think is a tremendous gift and blessing. It raises the awareness. So because we can be here to educate, to show the transparency and the simplicity of being able to transfer from where you're at to a precious metals IRA, and then you will own the real physical silver. We will then have the real physical silver deposited on your behalf in the vault. So no matter what's coming in the future, your IRA, your future is protected and preserved in real physical silver. So when everything happens, once the smoke settles, you have the ability anytime you want to sell out silver incrementally and then turn it into fiat again, but it's more or less at substantially higher prices considering where we're at today.
All right, and Terry, your company doesn't physically hold the silver. You help people walk through the process but then there is a trustee who acts as the custodian of the silver in their retirement account. Is that correct?
Yes, this is extremely regulated, and we use a Kingdom Trust custodian who actually manages it. We are actually the manufacturers of this, Judeo-Christian hallmark silver, and then we ship it to them, and it's in the vault, logged in on your behalf. No one has title or ownership of it but you, so it's very safe and secure.
And your company actually mints coins, silver coins.
Yeah, Judeo-Christian silver, 100% Judeo-Christian.
What do you mean? Is it a Christian
the
image?
The whole coin is all Judeo-Christian in its imagery, makes it a First Amendment protected coin. It's a freedom of religion. It's not part of the monetary system. It's an asset that is 100% Judeo-Christian in its making by all of the markings, and it's real clear that it's made for Judeo-Christian, which gives us that First Amendment protection as well.
All right, we're out of time. The address on the internet is cornerstoneassetmetals.com. Thank you, Terry.
500,000 and booming. This time, barely 1 million. We're not doing even remotely okay to have rates go up, but they must raise rates for credibility and to get ready for what is coming.
All right, Terry, this is a good point you're making, because historically, central banks raise interest rates to cool down overheating economies. They lower interest rates to spur economic growth. They raise interest rates to slow it down. Am I missing something here? Do any of you guys see signs of an overheated economy?
I don't see one. I hear the unemployment's low, but I don't believe it either.
The best factor for that, forget what they're saying. It's the data. And the data says the Baltic Dry Index, which is really goods moving around the world, has tumbled to 471, which is the lowest level in 30 years. And China is also on the verge, where they make most of the world's steel, is on track for the biggest drop in output in more than 20 years. So if the economies were heating, those two core factors of economic growth would never be at almost record lows.
And you're right, Terry, because throughout the last 6 months of 2015, all of the global news about the economy has been a warning that the world is locking up. The world economic system is locking up. It's slowing down. Global manufacturing is down. Commodity prices have plunged. Oil is in the basement. Shipping is in a depression. So I have to wonder, are they deliberately pulling the pin to detonate the economy? Are they trying to bring down the house in 2016?
Boy, if they're not trying, then why would they be doing it? Because if you look at the other indicator, is the one antithesis for the Fed. It's the Achilles heel. The physical gold and silver COMEX inventories that actually back up the paper physical gold and silver that controls the prices in the market, which is typically our indicator of inflation and economic growth, is gold and silver prices. Those inventories are literally at historic lows, meaning they have sold 330 ounces of gold on paper for every 1 real ounce in the vault for delivery. Wow. We are astounded because the physical gold and silver is flying out the door. The inventories in the COMEX are empty, and it's because most of the activity is purely driven by what is coming. The underground, or those that know, you may be right, Rick, that this bomb is ready to blow. If they're pulling a pin on purpose, I wouldn't be surprised, because it's a way to flush out and distract for some of the underlying derivative problems we have.
Terry, I've got to rewind back to what you said a few minutes ago about gold and silver. Your statement produced a lot of deer in the headlight looks here in the studio. I saw it on the faces of the guys here.
And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them for fear, and for looking after those things which are coming on the earth. For the powers of heaven shall be shaken. One man, one microphone, one mission, one message. True News, the only newscast reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. And now for the most powerful hour on radio, here is end-time newsman, Rick Wiles.
This is True News, 1 hour of uncensored news, views, and commentary. Welcome to the program. I'm Rick Wiles. Welcome back to segment 2 of True News. We heard from Governor Mike Huckabee in the first segment. Asset management specialist Terry Sacka is here for segment 2. Terry is the chief strategist for Cornerstone Asset Metals. Terry, welcome back.
Hi, Rick. Pleasure.
Yes, sir. Also in the studio with me is Doc, Edward, and Bob.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Good to be here.
Glad to have you guys back here. We're going to discuss Saudi Arabia's planned invasion of Syria and the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank's interest rate decision. Say that again.
I'm astounded at this. I mean, we are manufacturers of silver for IRA accounts and such. And 2015 was the largest demand for physical silver in a decade plus. The inventories that actually control the futures market, which is technically, they say, the physical market, which is ridiculous. It's now the derivative market. But they control the price of gold and silver. They have actually sold in the markets for gold 330 ounces on paper for every one real physical ounce in the vault for delivery. So just think, there's 330 guys on one side of the street and 1 ounce of gold on the other side. Who's going to get it? That has been going on increasingly over the last year and a half, and yet the prices are so low. It's purely a manipulation, a gift and a blessing to those who get it. But the fact that the vault inventories are near empty should shudder those in the West.
For people who have gold holdings in paper assets, they have a certificate that says they own gold. You're saying that there are 330 ounces on paper for every 1 ounce of physical gold, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right. Meaning the paper will be found if it's not controlled properly.
So
those holding paper, that market, that COMEX will default. If it defaults, credibility is
announced today. Guys, let's start with the Fed rate hike decision. The U.S. Federal Reserve today raised the interest rate from 0 to 0.25%. It also said they intend to have 3 more rate increases of the same size throughout 2016. Terry, why is this a big deal?
I don't believe the continued rate hikes, but the one hike today for a couple of factors. Number one was credibility. They flat out made it clear that they were going to, and if they decided not to, the world would have known that we were in serious trouble. They also know that without strong demand for treasuries, which we've had the last few months, massive dumping of U.S. treasuries, that if they didn't raise the rate, there would be no attraction to even come here. So that could also bring liquidity back into this country and people to buy the rates. But what's interesting is she just said in her interview that allowing or raising the rate here gives them the ability, if something were to happen economically, that they could then cut the rates to stimulate. I know that they must know that what's coming is coming, and they had to raise in order for them to be able to lower. Because if you look at just the 2 factors of when they raised rates last time, one, the last time they raised the rates in 2006, our debt to GDP was 61%. This time, our debt to GDP is 104%. And last time they raised the rates, housing starts were 2.5